Hey, it's Laura with TrueWell, and today we're diving into continuous glucose monitors. So today I'm answering the questions: what is a continuous glucose monitor, how a continuous glucose monitor works, how they're different from manual blood glucose monitors, how you can use a continuous glucose monitor to your benefit, what you need to consider when using one of these sensors. I'm going to tell you why I'm personally wearing a continuous glucose monitor, and then we're going to talk about how you can actually get one. So let's dive in. What is a continuous glucose monitor? So first of all, a continuous glucose monitor is a little disc that attaches to your skin with a super strong adhesive and has a really strong filament that goes into your skin. It's not a needle. It monitors your blood glucose levels or blood sugar levels, and either has a device that connects wirelessly, or many can actually connect to an app right on your phone. And over the last few years, a lot of advancement has been made in not just the capability of continuous glucose monitors, but also the ease of use. So how does a continuous glucose monitor work? So like I said, the CGM is just a little disc with adhesive to hold it firmly in place on your skin. It has a little filament in the center that will essentially puncture your skin so that it can stay in the tissue the entire time that you're wearing the disc. Some monitors will last a week, and then some last 2 weeks at a time. And I know that it sounds like it would hurt or be uncomfortable, but I assure you it does not. It really doesn't even hurt when you apply it. Manufacturers put them into an installation device, and honestly, the only discomfort that I've felt is if I either didn't let the alcohol dry completely, then it stung a little, but really the edges of the applicator pushing around your skin, that to me was more uncomfortable than the filament puncture itself. Now, a continuous glucose monitor is different from manual blood sugar monitors in that continuous glucose monitors measure those blood sugar levels from the interstitial fluid, while a manual glucose monitor takes an actual blood sample. What this means is that manual glucose monitors can give you an accurate on-the-spot reading, while continuous glucose monitors have a little bit of a lag, usually around 10 to 15 minutes. How to use a continuous glucose monitor to your benefit. So how to use this continuous glucose monitor to your benefit really lies in a few different factors. The first is if you have insulin resistance, or on the other end, hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar episodes where you need to monitor your blood sugar to ensure there's no emergency situation with your health. Now, people with type 1 diabetes almost always need this because their bodies don't produce much, if any, insulin. They're required to take insulin, but sometimes calculations aren't 100% accurate, and there's always the risk of going into severe hypoglycemia, which can cause coma and death. So those with hypoglycemia episodes pose the same risk also. So it's really essential for them to always know what their blood glucose levels are. Those with type 2 diabetes sometimes have hypoglycemia episodes as well, but it's more common for them to have hyperglycemia, which is blood glucose levels that are too high. Those with other metabolic issues like pre-diabetes or PCOS can use a continuous glucose monitor to get a handle on what foods affect their blood glucose in different ways to get their blood sugar levels under control, in an effort to control and lower their total A1C levels. Many are also trying to reverse insulin resistance. So having a constant monitor on lets you know how things like food, sleep, stress, and exercise either help or hinder your blood glucose levels. Then there's also another subgroup of those who don't have insulin resistance, but are interested in how all of these factors affect their glucose levels. This starts veering over into what's called biohacking, and many people are getting on board with research showing that lower continuous glucose levels are better for metabolic health as a whole. So there are a few things to consider when using a glucose monitor. The first thing is that, sometimes it's not always super accurate. The reason is that even though these units are calibrated by the company before they're packaged, where you place it on your arm can have an effect. For example, I've tried them on my right arm, and no matter where it's applied, it's not even close to accurate. On my left arm, I only have 1 or 2 spots that show accurate results. Usually the more kind of fatty areas are said to be more accurate than the more muscular areas, and that's held true for me as well. The second thing is that there is a lag in reporting. That's usually 10 to 15 minutes. So if you're using one for hyper or hypoglycemia, you may need to act quickly and constantly monitor with a manual blood glucose monitor. The good news is that you can usually set a threshold on the device or within the app so that if it does start heading into way too high range or way too low of a range, you'll get an alarm so that you can correct the situation as quickly as possible. The third thing to know is that there are a few other situations which would render a continuous glucose monitor as inaccurate. One of them is taking high doses of vitamin C, which when you open the package, it actually gives you a warning about. The other is that sometimes, seemingly for no reason, you could get super low or high random readings. This has only happened to me during the nighttime, and I've read on a few different forums from others that it can happen if you put heavy pressure on the sensor, like if you roll over in bed and have that arm under you while you're sleeping. And then the fourth thing is that it can take a day or sometimes two to get really accurate on your readings. It's important to still check with a manual blood glucose monitor in those times to ensure that you're getting accurate readings and can make sure that they coincide. Why I am wearing a continuous glucose monitor. So I'm wearing a continuous glucose monitor for a few reasons. The first is that I've been diagnosed as pre-diabetic. This alone does not warrant my insurance company paying for a continuous glucose monitor, but I've opted to initially pay out of pocket because I'm in the age bracket where also my hormones are going all wacky and I was waking up in sweats every night. This can be from hormones, or it could be due to the dawn phenomenon. And this is something that diabetics experience where your blood sugar drops very low in the middle of the night and then your body kicks in to bring that blood sugar level back up. And many times this can create more like body heat and sweating. Many people have strange or even bad dreams when this happens, but it usually results in waking up frequently. So once I wore my sensor for 2 weeks and saw that trend, my doctor advised that it proved that my situation was genetic, and I wanted to know that for sure because I rarely eat sugar or bread. I eat anti-inflammatory and I maintain that lifestyle and have eaten low carb for years. So he confirmed to me that if you have the genetics for it, it can be really hard to still keep your A1C under control, but that if I hadn't been eating healthy and low carb like I had, that I probably would have been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes years ago. But wearing that continuous glucose monitor in the first few weeks of it helped me to confirm that. Now I'm actually using it to see how different foods affect my blood glucose levels, but also different things like what order of macros do to my blood sugar levels. For example, if I eat protein first, then carbs, what happens? Or if I eat fat with carbs, or reverse the order. I also wanted to know the direct effect of exercise, sleep, and stress. For example, I had a really stressful day on New Year's Eve because we had company for the entire week before and then had a lot of people over that night and then stayed up late for the ball to drop. And what happened is that my blood glucose levels were much higher than normal all day long. And then the next day they stayed elevated as well. So really wearing the sensor has been extremely eye-opening for me, and I'll continue to use them until I feel comfortable in how I'm managing my blood sugar with some different lifestyle and dietary changes that I've implemented since finding out that I am pre-diabetic. To see my other videos on continuous glucose monitors, my pre-diabetes diagnosis and what you should do when you are diagnosed with any type of insulin resistance, and even my blood sugar experiments with food, check out the playlist that I have on the TrueWell channel. And if you have enjoyed this information so far, subscribe so that you always have notifications on new videos. And lastly, I'm going to talk about how to get a continuous glucose monitor. So for some, this can be tricky, and here's why. If you've been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, your health insurance should pay for these absolutely. If you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, hypoglycemia, PCOS, or other insulin resistance conditions, they may pay for them. If you're diagnosed as pre-diabetic, they probably won't. And if you don't have any of these, then they won't pay for it as well. However, what I've learned is that even though my insurance company won't pay for it, there's still 2 ways that you can get them. The first is just to simply ask your doctor if he or she will write a prescription for one. Tell them that you're really interested in your metabolic health and would like to trial a sensor for a month or 2. Many doctors will have no problem doing this. Just know that you will have to pay for it out of pocket. My out of pocket runs about $78 a month, and that includes 2 sensors that each last 2 weeks. I am currently wearing the FREESTYLE LIBRE 3. I have another video that compares the 2 and the 3 and the features of the 3 if you're interested in that. Now, there are companies that offer sensors and a membership that will help you interpret the data and then have coaches on staff as well. These can start to get a little pricey though, and if you're interested in comparing those, check out my videos that compares getting a prescription versus going through these companies to see the pros and cons of each option. Please let me know down in the comments if you have any more questions. Be true, be well, and I'll see you in the next video.